Today we are reacting to more top 3 places you can't go and people who went anyways, and this one is part 5, obviously from Mr. Ballen. We love this guy, his storytelling is absolutely brilliant. So, let's check this out. Spoilers, it didn't end well, it never does. Okay, Mr. Ballen, as usual, let's see what you do to the like button.
There is this horrifying creature that lives on a tiny uninhabited island in the southwestern Pacific that lives underground, and at night it will come out and it will eat anything from coconuts to fish to birds to pigs to people. And in today's top story, we're going to learn about someone that accidentally wound up on this island, totally stranded, and came face to face with this nightmarish creature. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel, because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week.
Not anymore,
so if that's
Mr.
of interest
Ballen.
to you, on the next cold day, sneak behind the like button and slap their ears and then run away. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
He was far more brutal with the like button in the early days. I mean, clapping someone's ears, that hurts. You can also pop their eardrums. What's down there? Let's have a look.
Dr. Guy Garman, also known as Doc Deep, was an avid scuba diver, and in 2015 he decided he was going to put his scuba diving to the test and try to break the world record for the deepest recreational scuba dive. At the time, the current record...
I mean, come on. Why do people never learn?
to break the world record for the deepest recreational scuba dive. At the time, the current record was 1,090 feet, set by a man named Ahmed Gaber in 2014. Guy's plan was to go down to 1,090 feet and then keep going to 1,200 feet, and that would be his record-setting mark. But in order to do that, you need a dive site that goes down to 1,200 feet. But luckily, Guy did most of his scuba diving off the coast of St. Croix in the Caribbean, and that area was known for an incredibly deep dive spot. Now, when most people think of scuba...
The Caribbean waters is also, you know, home to, like, sharks, like great whites and tigers and other things like that.
Diving in the Caribbean, they think of beautiful clear water and amazing coral reef and exotic fishes, and everyone's so happy and it's so great and the water's so warm. And off St. Croix, that was true. But if you continued going offshore about 250 feet, you'd reach a drop-off that's known as the wall. And we're not talking about a gradual drop-off. We're talking about the seafloor going from flat to turning 45 degrees and going straight down 2 miles into a complete black abyss. Now, the only people that are actually allowed to dive into the wall are very experienced scuba divers with all the certifications. But if you're a tourist and you come to St. Croix, you can still scuba dive off the coast, where it is beautiful and shallow and warm and there's reefs and fish, but you're allowed to swim out to the edge of the wall. And people report getting out there and standing on the edge of this cliff, looking in the water with their mask and not being prepared for how intimidating it is. I mean, you're standing on one side where behind you is like this tropical paradise, and in front of you is this seemingly endless void where we don't even know what's down there. I mean, we've only explored 10% of the ocean. These deep portions of the ocean we can't get down, so we don't know what's down there. What we do know is that sometimes whales will dive down into these deeper sections of the water, and scientists will be tracking their dive, and when they come up again, after only going down maybe 1,000 or 2,000 feet, they'll return with these massive bites taken out of them, because apparently there are creatures down there that we haven't discovered yet that are so big and so aggressive that a whale seems like a reasonable thing to go after for food. And so imagine standing on the edge of this cliff looking out and being like, what's down there? Well,
megalodons are not dead, are they not? Because you're like, what the hell could take a bite out of a whale? Like, seriously injure it? Wow, okay, I'm intrigued. Go on, Mr. Ballen,
so imagine standing on the edge of this cliff looking out and being like, what's down there? Well, our boy Guy decides, I'm going to find out what's down there, and I'm going to do my record-setting dive at the wall. And so after meticulous planning and hiring a support team that's going to be there to help him do this dive, he, his wife, and his son fly to St. Croix and they get ready to do this dive. Guy had arranged for a line to be lowered right at the edge of the wall that was weighted down by an anchor that was going to go down all the way to 1,300 feet. And they would put a metal placard at the 1,200 foot mark on the actual line so that when Guy went down, he would reach that placard at 1,200 feet. That's the record-setting mark. He would use a grease pen to mark the placard to indicate, I made it, this is legitimate, and then he would go back up. And that's how the...
Look how many tanks he's got. He's not going to run out anytime soon, is he?
Mark the placard to indicate, I made it, this is legitimate, and then he would go back up, and that's how the dive was going to go.
Right.
And so in the early morning of August 15th, 2015, Guy, along with his big support team, they head out to the edge of the wall. Guy gets into the water, along with his son, who's going to go down with him for the first 200 feet, and he looks up at the support boat, and he gives him the okay. He's ready to start the dive, and then he and his son give the signal. They're ready to go down, and they start their descent into the void. As they're sinking lower and lower and lower in the water column, it's getting darker and darker until it's completely and totally pitch black. They reach the 200-foot mark. They come to a stop, as was planned, and Guy's son, Kip, would give his father a squeeze for good luck because they can't communicate, and then Kip would go back up, and Guy, on his own, continues down to the 1,200-foot mark. Once...
But the thing, I mean, these people, they do things on their own. People go into caves on their own. People go diving in caves on their own. People go dive into stupid depths on their own. Why? Why are they always on their own?
Go back up, and Guy, on his own, continues down to the 1,200-foot mark. Once Guy was on his own, a timer started because it's very important to track how long he's down at depth, and his team was expecting him to be back up at the 350-foot mark in 38 minutes from when his son left. But 38 minutes came and went, and he was not at the 350-foot mark.
Surprise!
But even though this is a big problem, Guy had a whole bunch of extra air canisters with him, and so if he ran into any sort of problem, he would be able to continue to breathe air and fix the problem before coming up. It would just mean longer decompression stops along the way up. And since he was tethered to the guideline, they knew he couldn't drift away. And so they just had to wait and hope that he ran into some problem and that he would fix it eventually, and then he would come back up again. But he never did. They couldn't really send a rescue mission down to get him because Guy was going so deep. He was the only one that was able to get down there. No one else was qualified or would be able to do it or had the right equipment for it. He was totally on his own down there. It would take 3 days before they were able to get the right equipment that was able to pull this lineup out of the water, and attached at the end of it was Guy, and he was deceased. He had drowned. But the really scary thing about what happened to Guy is when he went down into that abyss, he had all these extra air canisters attached to him. And so presumably he went down the line, probably all the way down to the record-breaking mark, and then he got trapped somehow. And as he's trapped on this line in total darkness, surrounded by who knows what down there, probably for several hours, he just cycled through his backup air canisters, wondering, am I going to run out of air and drown? Or am I going to get attacked by some animal down here?
That's not like Mr. Barnes not tell us. We know he died. What happened? Oh, Mr. Ballen! I'm quite disappointed now. I really want to know what happened. The Bolton stripper. Bolton is just down the road from me. Is he talking about Bolton in England? Let's find out. Don't touch the water.
There is this tiny little stream that winds its way through a forest in Yorkshire, England called the Bolton Stid. It's not very wide, you could jump over it. It doesn't appear to be very deep, it looks like maybe a foot or two, and it's not moving very fast, but that's all an illusion. There are signs up all over the place that say do not go near the Bolton Stid. It kills people. Because just beneath the surface of this seemingly tame water body is a natural booby trap that has a 100% mortality rate, meaning every single person that has ever stepped foot in the Bolton Stid has died. In 1998, Barry and Lynn Colletwer were walking along the Bolton Strid on their second day of their honeymoon, and all of a sudden a torrential downpour starts just raining down on them, and the rocks they were on suddenly got pretty slick, and Lynn slips and falls into the Strid.
Oh dear.
Barry, being a good husband, runs over to try to save her, and he too falls into the Strid. A man named Desmond Thomas was on the other side of the Strid, and he saw Barry as he was running for his wife, and he saw him fall in, and he watched Barry's face as he was looking at him as if he was going to stay afloat at the top. Desmond said it looked like someone came up and grabbed his leg and yanked him under the water. And
there must be some sort of rip. You know what I mean? Like they have, like when you watch Bondi Rescue, that series, they have certain parts of the beach where they have a rip that can pull you out or pull you under. I wonder if it's got an underwater like current.
At the top, Desmond said it looked like someone came up and grabbed his leg and yanked him under the water. And
I've never heard of this, me.
Lynn's body was found 6 days later in West Yorkshire, and Barry's body was found over a month later, 10 miles downstream.
Wow.
In another case, in 2010, an 8-year-old boy named Aaron Page was playing by the Bolton Strid for his birthday. There's an area that's totally safe, that's away from the Strid, where people have picnics and that kind of thing. And he came down to the edge of the Strid and was running on the rocks, and he slipped and he fell in. Now, an adult saw this happen and they ran over and they were able to grab onto him while he's in the water. But the pull from inside the water was so strong that this person couldn't hold on to this child.
Wow,
who was
really?
eventually sucked under and dragged away and drowned. And beyond these two reports, there's dozens of others of people trying to jump over the Strid and falling in and drowning. So why...
Well, if they know this, if they know what sort of suction's going on in that river, why are they jumping it? Come on. Some people are just stupid.
Others of people trying to jump over the Strid and falling in and drowning. So why is the Bolton Strid so deadly? If you look at this picture, this is of the river wharf, and it's just a little ways upstream of the Bolton Strid. And all this water in the river wharf gets funneled into the Bolton Strid. And the way it fits through that narrow section that is the Bolton Strid is the river turns on its side. So when you're looking at the Bolton Strid and you think, oh, that's not that deep. Well, it is that deep. It's at least as deep as the river wharf is wide.
Right.
And if you look at it on the surface and you say, oh, well, the Bolton Strid's not moving very fast. Well, that's because underneath the surface, there is a whipping current. And in fact, the current that runs through the Strid is so strong that if you were standing on one of the rocks overlooking the water, you're looking down into the Bolton Strid. Well, you're not really standing on solid rock. You're kind of standing on a ledge. You just don't know it because the water meets the edge of the ledge. Underneath the rock you're standing on, the water has completely carved it out. So if you were to fall in, before you get sucked under the water, you would get sucked against the side and you would disappear under one of those shelves and go way far back underneath these rocks. And then you'd get sucked under and drown. And a lot of people who fall...
Wow. So it's almost like that story that we seen on the Mr. Ballen one where they got lost. And they kicked up all the silt and they turned the wrong way and they were upstand. They were in the bloody... There was 2 ways out, wasn't there? And they went the wrong way and got stuck. Similar sort of thing.
Back underneath these rocks.
Wow.
And then you'd get sucked under and drown. And a lot of people who fall into the Strid, they don't make it out the other side. They don't get downstream. They get pulled into all these different caverns and tunnels that have been carved out by that current. And they're trapped in there forever. Because no one's going in to retrieve them.
No.
Not even with scuba gear. Because if you get in there with scuba gear, the current will push you into these different caves and you aren't getting out again.
That's crazy. How nature. Nature is so powerful. Wow. I've never heard of this place. And Yorkshire's not too far from me. I'm not going near that bloody Bolton Strid, though. No way. No chance. I like to push a few people in there, Let's go. Claws. So this is the highlight of this story. Well, top 3, sorry. Let's go.
On June 1st, 1937, Amelia Earhart took off from Oakland, California on an eastbound flight around the world. It was her second attempt to become the first pilot ever to circumnavigate the globe. She, along with her flight navigator Fred Noonan, flew to Miami and then down to South America, across the Atlantic to Africa, and then east to India and Southeast Asia. The pair reached Lae, New Guinea on June 29th. A couple days later, on July 2nd, Earhart and Noonan would depart Ley, and they would make their way to tiny Shouldnt Island, which was their next refueling stop, but they would never arrive. What Earhart was trying to accomplish at the time was such a big deal. And so when they disappeared, it was heartbreaking, and it made international headlines. And
long silence follows Amelia's radio SOS. Trying to see if there's anything else that gives anything away. Okay.
And this huge search is launched for them, but they can't find them. And after 2 weeks, they officially declared they were lost at sea and most likely dead. 3 years later, and 350 miles away from Shouldnt Island, which was the island Earhart and Noonan were
supposed to land at
before they vanished, a British scientist was on this tiny little uninhabited island called Niku Maroro, and they made a startling discovery. He found an incomplete skeleton next to what looked like the remains of a campfire, and their skeleton was kind of torn all over the place, like they had been ripped limb from limb. Because of Niku Maroro's proximity to Shouldnt Island, everybody speculated that this has got to be the body of either Amelia Earhart or Noonan. The bones were sent to 2 doctors in Fiji, and they unfortunately said, no, this isn't Earhart or Noonan, this is somebody else. So those bones were ultimately disposed of because no one could claim them or knew who they were, and everybody just kind of forgot about it until 2017 when a forensic anthropologist...
What? 1937 to 2017. It's like 80 years? What? Oh, I wanted the end of this.
Knew who they were, and everybody just kind of forgot about it until 2017 when a forensic anthropologist decided to manually re-examine the measurements of the bones that were taken off of Niku Maroro Island and compare them to real measurements of Amelia Earhart. And they discovered that clearly those doctors in Fiji had made a mistake because the measurements of these bones match Amelia Earhart almost exactly. So researchers go back to Niku Maroro Island and they go to the area where these bones were found near that campfire, and they look around and they find a couple 1930s era bottles, glass bottles, and one of them is a freckle cream, and Amelia Earhart had lots of freckles and she liked to use freckle cream to cover them up. She was kind of famous for doing that. And so they found that freckle cream on this island near bones that look like they belong to Amelia Earhart. So while some scientists are putting their energy into confirming that yes, those bones were Amelia Earhart. We don't have the bones, but we can show you with the measurements and the freckle cream. And there's another picture that apparently shows the landing gear of her plane off of Niku Maroro Island. So there's some people that are working on that angle. And there's another group of scientists and researchers that are saying, okay, let's assume that that really was Amelia Earhart. Let's figure out what happened to her once she got to Niku Maroro Island. And the leading theory is horrifying. Although Niku Maroro Island is uninhabited.
What do you reckon? He says it's uninhabited. What kind of animal? It's going to be some kind of animal. Something that rips people to pieces like a bear or something. It won't be a bear, though. Komodo dragons. I don't know. And
the leading theory is horrifying. Although Niku Maroro Island is uninhabited by people, it is inhabited by one of the scariest creatures on the planet, the coconut crab. They're 3 feet long, they can carry at least 6 times their body weight, and they use their pincers that are as strong as a lion's jaw to rip open coconuts, which is their main source of food. But coconuts are not the only thing they eat. They'll also eat pigs, they'll eat each other, they'll even eat themselves. And they're prolific climbers because
they'll eat themselves. They'll eat themselves. How's that work? I better stop now before I'm dead.
They'll eat each other. They'll even eat themselves. And they're prolific climbers because they need to get up to get to the coconuts. But in some parts of the world, they use their climbing ability to climb up and grab birds and break their wings with their pincers and then drag them into their underground burrows where they will eat them too. The few researchers and scientists that have gone out to Niku Maroro Island have said at night, thousands of these crabs will emerge from their underground burrows and they'll go looking for food. And they have a really keen sense of smell and they can smell blood. So when one of the crabs goes up and grabs a bird and starts ripping it apart, the thousands of others will come charging over and swarm the bird because they've smelled the blood, and they'll rip it to pieces and they'll all try to get in on the action. And so the theory goes, Earhart and Noonan are making their way to Shouldnt Island. They get off track somehow and they wind up crash landing 350 miles away on Niku Maroro Island on one of the reefs. Noonan probably dies on impact, and Earhart, who's badly wounded and probably bleeding, she gets onto the island and she makes her way up to that area where that campfire was found. And for some amount of time, Earhart is able to survive off of whatever she had on her in those glass bottles, but in her weakened state and bleeding, at some point she probably attracted the coconut crabs who one night came out and swarmed her, ripped her to pieces, and ate her. Today, Niku Maroro Island...
So, crabs can kill. That could mean two things. Have you seen the size of those bloody pincers, man? What a horrible death that would have been, swarmed by, oh my God, being ripped apart by thousands of crabs. Wow.
At some point, she probably attracted the coconut crabs who one night came out and swarmed her, ripped her to pieces, and ate her. Today, Niku Maroro Island is only inhabited by the coconut crabs and it's protected land under the Republic of Kiribati.
Wow.
So if you want to go, you have to get express permission from the Republic of Kiribati, and they send someone to go with you. And there's no airport on the island, so you have to land on a separate island and then ride to Niku Maroro on a boat. But you have to pass through Cyclone Alley, which means you can only travel there at certain parts of the year, and even then it's incredibly dangerous.
Look at that island.
Which means you can only travel there at certain parts of the year.
Look at that island, man. Wow, killed by crabs.
And even then, it's incredibly dangerous. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Let me know in the comments what you thought of them, and I will pin the best comment at the top of the comments section. If you enjoyed today's video...
Like button torturer. Yeah, if you like Mr. Ballen's videos, go and subscribe to the man. He tells great stories. Although this first one didn't have an ending. I'm still annoyed about that. What happened? What happened after they found him deceased? Did something bite him, or did something, you know, did he just drown and that was it? But I mean, the rest of the story, I mean, I always find these Mr. Ballen stories are very, very engaging. It might be his storytelling, I'm not sure, but it's also, you've got to have the material to talk about as well, haven't you, for the stories to come out. But the way he tells them, you know, he keeps you hanging on right to the very end, then slaps you in the face and say, "Crabs at the woman." It's like, what? What? I don't know what's going on. Anyway, what did you guys think of this reaction? Let me know in the comments. If you want to check out any more from Mr. Ballen, there'll be a playlist right up there. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ballen, and I'll see you all on the next video.